All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating and honestly pretty provocative take on the U.S. food stamp program. The idea here is that it's not a social safety net, but actually a cold, calculated economic tool. Okay, let's dive right in. So, right out of the gate, the author hits us with this really stark analogy from the movie Fight Club. You know the one. A car company does the math. What's cheaper, a massive recall or paying out lawsuits for the people who die? They pick the cheaper option. Well, the author argues that the same brutal, ice cold cost benefit analysis is the hidden logic behind a lot of our government policies. And the one policy they put right in the crosshairs? It's the U.S. food stamp program. SNAP. The argument we're about to unpack is that this program isn't really about feeding people. It's about something else entirely. Okay, so Section 1. Let's dig into this foundational theory. The author basically frames our whole economy through this, well, pretty grim utilitarian lens. Okay, so here's the absolute core of the argument. The author says, forget everything you think about SNAP being welfare. That's not what it is. Instead, you've got to think of it like a lever, a tool that's been designed to get very specific economic results, like managing the labor supply and pumping up the GDP. The big question is, how on earth would it do that? Well, the author doesn't just leave us hanging. They lay out a very specific chain of events to back this whole idea up. So let's walk through how they build this argument step by step. Okay, so check out this causal chain the author lays out. It's a wild ride. The theory goes like this. First, programs like SNAP give women a level of financial independence, which, in the author's words, unties them from men. That, in turn, pushes more women into the workforce. Now, you've got more people looking for jobs, which creates a surplus of labor, and that drives down wages for everybody. And when wages are lower, what happens? People need more credit, and they consume more just to get by, which, you guessed it, gives a boost to the GDP. It's a controversial argument for sure, but the logic is laid out very clearly. And, to give this whole idea some historical backup, the author points out this isn't some new thing. The very first program kicked off way back in the 30s. Kennedy brought it back in 61, Johnson made it permanent, and get this, by the 2000s, it was being explicitly used as an economic stimulus tool after the Great Recession, which you gotta admit, kinda bolsters the author's whole point. So, if you accept that economic framework, right, then what the author says next about the modern political debate over SNAP, well, it's a pretty blunt takedown. The author's first point is just about scale. I mean, look at that number. $39 trillion. That's the U.S. national debt. The author's point is basically, are we really spending all our time and energy arguing about this? It just seems insane, right? In the face of a number that big, the fight over SNAP's budget is painted as a total distraction. And this chart really drives that point home. The author points out that total education spending in the U.S. every year is around $2 trillion. So when you put the SNAP budget next to a giant number like that, the author argues all the political fireworks and energy spent fighting over it, it just seems completely out of whack. And it's not just about the money. The author lays out a few other reasons why they call this whole political fight dumb. They're saying it could literally bankrupt farmers who depend on the program, it might lead to food riots in cities, and it's just stirring up all this unnecessary racial and social drama. And get this, their last point is that even if the federal program got cut, states would probably just cook up their own versions anyway, just to keep their labor cheap and attract businesses. So, if the fight isn't really about the money, what's it about? The author speculates, and this is a pretty controversial claim, that the real motivation behind all the political opposition is just plain old racial animus. Okay, so after tearing down the program and the politics around it, the author doesn't just leave it there. They offer their own, let's just say, equally provocative ideas for how to fix it. First up, they want to get really strict about what you can actually buy. So no more sodas, cupcakes, Doritos, that stuff's out. Instead, the benefits would only cover essentials, meat, vegetables, and here's the twist. They'd add things you can't buy now, like diapers, soap, and laundry detergent. The author's argument is, isn't it kind of absurd that you can buy a Mountain Dew but not diapers for your kid? And to prove this point, the author tells this wild story. Apparently, in one county in Maryland, Tide laundry detergent literally became a kind of black market currency. Why? Exactly because it's something everyone needs, but you can't buy it with food stamps. It's just a crazy example of these unintended consequences, right? But wait, it gets even more radical. The author suggests putting the benefits in the man's name.
The idea, in their view, is to encourage family stability. The argument here is that the way the system is set up now, it actually gives women an incentive to be independent of men. So this author believes the whole program should be flipped to support a more traditional family unit instead.
All right, so this all brings us to the end, to the author's final thoughts on government spending, what our priorities are as a society, and one last question that's really designed to make you stop and think.
And this is the final question the author leaves us with. They ask, why is spending on seniors considered mandatory, something you can't touch, while spending on our children has to be fought for and reapproved year after year? It's a really provocative question, and it's meant to make us all think about where our society's priorities really are. And that's where the author leaves it.